Austin Faith Dialogue, at the crossroads of religion and life, a series highlighting the cultural and social interactions with the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Area Interreligious Ministries in cooperation with KNVA. Join us now for Austin Faith Dialogue.
Welcome to Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm Carl Gronberg, host of the program, and you know, we have Memorial Day and then 4th of July and Labor Day weekend, and it's coming quickly. And that means a lot of things to a lot of people. On this edition of Austin Faith Dialogue, we're going to talk about that connection between the faith community and labor and how we live and experience those realities in our lives. And I have two very special guests with me in Austin Faith Dialogue. Carla Cheatham, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad that you're in Austin, and also glad you're in Austin Faith Dialogue. And Michael Murphy, a longtime friend. And Michael, glad to have you here, and thanks for being on Austin Faith Dialogue.
It's good to be here.
When we talk about religion and labor, some of the faithful would say, oh, wait a minute, don't make that kind of connection. You know, they'd say, my religion, my faith is my private business, and I don't want to get involved with labor or whatever it may be. Obviously, because you are people from Religion Labor Network of Austin, that you see a connection between those. Carla, how do you see that connection between the faith community and labor?
When I'm asked that question, my response is often, instead of how could we be involved in labor as people of faith, my response is how could we not? I believe that all people of faith are called to be a part of making the world better and taking care of our brothers and sisters in the human family and watching out for one another's dignity and respect and quality of life. And so as people of faith, I believe that it is required of us to make certain that all persons who are working are given what they deserve. And across all faith traditions in the sacred scriptures of each of the faiths, you can find scriptures that talk about the need for workers to be given the wages that they are due, and that is not to be withheld from them, and that they are to be treated with dignity and respect. And so I believe that it is not an issue of politics, not even an issue of religion in the sense of one particular faith or another, but I believe that it's about what is right and what is about spirit and what about our faith, which is common to us all, that all people deserve to be treated with dignity and respect.
That's good. Thank you, Carla. You know, I think, Michael, that would preach. And I think probably the viewing audience needs to know something about you and about your background, because that was beautifully spoken. Thank you, Carla. And we're going to come back to that, a little bit about your background and your theological training, but also where you are now as Executive Director of Religion and Labor Network of Austin. But Michael, when you hear Carla talk that way, so eloquently and beautifully, and you think of your life story, you're also an advocate for those who labor, the working people of the community. You've had an interesting journey. Where are you today, and what do you do?
Right now, Carl, I work for as an assistant business manager with the Electrical Workers Union here in Austin, and that's a union that represents about 1,500 construction electricians here in Austin, and we build many of the prominent features that you see around Austin.
You weren't always with the union. Tell us a little bit about how that happened, that you as a man who is interested in providing for your family, that you got involved in this type of, in the union, and then eventually into religion and labor. Talk to us about that.
Well, I had worked, I guess, you know, when the other kids in school were all saying that they wanted to be doctors and lawyers and firemen and nurses, I didn't say to myself I wanted to be an electrician. I was saying pretty much the things that other kids were saying, but just so happened that as...
I have to interrupt. What did you want to be? A Murphy. What should a Murphy be? Let's see, figure that out.
A policeman or a fireman.
Yeah, which is good. We like our policemen and our firemen. But that's okay, but you were saying, yeah, go on.
But just as life unfolded, one of my earliest jobs was doing electrician's helper's work, and pretty soon it came to that was all that I knew how to do, that somebody would pay me to do. And so for years I worked at various types of electrical jobs. I worked doing traffic signals once for the city of Fort Worth. I worked doing highway lighting. And so in these non-unionized jobs, I found that I would learn just enough of the electrical trade to do what the employer needed me to do, but not enough to where I could actually consider myself to be a skilled, qualified electrician and could sell myself on the market as such. And so I found that working these jobs that I was limited, and that the people who worked in those jobs who did know the tricks of the trade would like to keep those tricks secret so as to make themselves indispensable to the company. And so when I had recently moved to Austin, somebody told me about the electrical worker union here, and that there was an apprenticeship program. And so I went down and I talked to a union organizer named Ralph Merriweather, and what he told me was too good to be true. They were going to pay more money than what I was currently making, and they were going to send me to school. And hell, I would have paid them to go to school. And so it was so good to be true. I just couldn't believe it. And I got on the phone and I called my father and asked him.
And what Dad said?
Is this for real?
He said, if this is the IBEW, they're for real. Jump on it. And I did. And it was the best professional move I've ever made.
You know, one of the things, Carla, I hear as Michael tells his story is that when you met that union representative, that he treated you as a human being. He said, we're not only going to pay you, but we're also going to send you to school. Religion and Labor Network of Austin is an organization that's about in your 4th year, is that right?
Yes.
And wondering, how does that, what Michael just shared, come in with Religion and Labor Network of Austin, Carla, in terms of helping to lift up for the community at large the whole idea of the potential of a worker and the value of a human being. What are some of the things that Religion and Labor Network of Austin has done and might want to do in our community to do that to people like Michael Murphy?
Well, the mission of the Religion and Labor Network of Austin, RLNA, which can take a bit of time sometimes for folks to be able to get that mouthful in. So RLNA, our mission statement is that we are a network of people from faith, labor, and the community. And our goal is to bring together these persons to do education and organization as well as mobilization, so that we can fight and work for fair benefits and dignified and safe working conditions for all of the working men and women of Central Texas and the Austin area. And so we have been involved in many things, everything from supporting unions when they have been in the process of trying to negotiate a fair contract with their employer, when there have been issues such as in the past there was an issue where AISD had promised to pay prevailing wages to construction workers, but then it was decided that that would not happen. And so it's very important when you have faith and labor working together, because there are venues in which Michael could go as a labor person that I would not have the language or the understanding of the labor issues necessary to be able to have an impact. But there are also places where perhaps Michael would be trying to speak to fight for worker justice, and he may not be given the same response as I as a clergy person may be. So when you bring labor and persons from labor and persons of faith together to work together, we are that much more empowered to have the language and the techniques to be able to navigate the workers' systems, to be able to say, what is the need here, what is right, and how can we call everyone to a higher standard. Our goal is not to say that employers are evil, but is to say that we want to call everyone to a higher standard. So we're not looking just for the dignity of employees, we're looking for the dignity of employers as well. We've been involved in things such as the local Sweat Free campaign At the end of June, we were very grateful to see Austin City Council vote unanimously to pass an ordinance stating that some $2.5 to $2.7 million a year that the city spends on textiles and garments for city employees, uniforms, will not go to companies that contract with sweatshops or those factories that violate 2 or more labor laws. We will not be spending our tax dollars towards that. And Religion and Labor Network was integrally involved in meeting with council persons, calling clergy persons and faith leaders of all different faith traditions to sign on in support of that. And we were working with Austin Sweat Free Coalition, led primarily by the Texas Fair Trade Coalition, and had other wonderful groups working with us as well.
You really do a lot of networking.
A lot of different things, yes.
Michael, you've been with this organization since it started, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
What do you, as you listen again to what Carla gives us as resume of some of the things that have been done, what are some of the things that you have really been excited about regarding Religion Labor Network of Austin?
You know, when I first came to the Religion and Labor Network of Austin, I was invited by Louis Malfaro at the Austin Central Labor Council to attend the first meeting of the Religion and Labor Network of Austin. And I was attracted to the idea because this was at a time, if you'll recall, about 4 years ago, there was a lot of our public discourse where Christianity or religion was mentioned. There was an ideology attached to that was not the ideology that I share, even though I attend church on a fairly regular basis. I found that the public image of religion was not what I found to be my religion. And so I went to the first meeting curious and intrigued by the opportunity to join with other people of faith who did not share an ideology that was offensive to working people.
Well, you know, and I think that's really interesting how you've kind of made this connection then between your ideology, as you called it, but your faith, how you articulate and live your faith, and your job and your work and your concern for other people, and being able to bring those together. And the Religion Labor Network of Austin has been that kind of a resource for you, a way to express these kinds of views and thoughts and faith that you have. We're going to talk more about pulpits and faith and labor in the second half of the program, and so we're going to ask all of you who are with us in Austin Faith Dialogue as we're thinking about Labor Day coming up in a few weeks, that we want you to stay with us, and we'll talk about that connection further between labor and faith and how that connects with the congregations of our community. Please stay with us on Austin Faith Dialogue. Welcome back to Austin Faith Dialogue. I don't want to be a bearer of bad news, but you know, summer is winding down and it'll be only a few weekends until we're at Labor Day. And our guests on Austin Faith Dialogue are talking about what I think is really important, that we put together this whole idea of faith and labor and how that expresses within the uniqueness of who we are individually, but also how we are as a community. And Religion Labor Network of Austin is important, and I think we want to talk about one of the things that you do. And we want to talk, you've talked about in the first part of the program a lot of wonderful things that you did and have done. But let's talk a little bit about this idea, and this won't be the first religion, or labor in the pulpit rather, that's been sponsored by RLNA, but you want to invite congregational communities to be a part of it. What's the deal with labor in the pulpit?
Labor in the Pulpits is a national program, and each year thousands of churches and thousands of pulpits, and not just pulpits. We're not talking just about Catholic and Protestant faith traditions. We're talking about every faith tradition, from Islamic traditions as well as Judaic traditions. And so we have persons from labor advocates, we have workers, and we have persons of faith who go into faith communities and stand and speak to these communities about the issues that workers face. We believe that, and this happens every Labor Day weekend, so whenever a faith community holds their services, Labor Day weekend, whether it's on Sunday the 2nd or any other time during that weekend, then we are offering to have speakers come, speakers who are trained and who have scripted notes, so they hopefully will not wag on and take up too much time during the service, although people usually are very excited to hear what they have to say.
Yeah, it's a nice change from the local clergy.
Right. Well, guilty as charged. But they can speak to the faith communities to say, these are the issues that workers face.
Well, what are some of the issues that workers are facing nationally? A lot of us hear the scuttlebutt coming out of Michigan and out of the car manufacturers and their employees, but what about in a local area? What's going on locally, or what are some of the issues that workers are facing here?
Well, one of the most prominent issues with organized labor in this area has been with the bus drivers at Capital Metro. If you'll recall, was it 2 years ago that they had a big contract dispute, and it ended up they had a one-day strike, and at the end of the day, with the help of the Austin mayor, they were able to settle that strike and get a contract that was fair to the workers and fair to the taxpayers who fund Capital Metro. And they're coming back up again for the next contract, and so we expect that there may be some tension around forming a new contract. And so this is a place where the faith leaders, the last time we had that contract dispute, the faith leaders were very out front and in center, center up front, helping to bring a resolution to that issue, and we feel like there's another opportunity for faith and labor.
Michael, as I remember that discussion was going on, one of the things that seemed important to me is that transportation is important to the quality, not only of individuals, but of the entire community, and that Capital Metro and those involved in transportation are dealing with something bigger than how much money they are making, profit and loss. They are providing a service to the community. And there are those people, workers, who maybe don't get, as I do, into my pickup or whatever we drive and turn it on and drive where we're going. There are those who are really dependent upon public transportation.
Well, in the last contract dispute, there was a move put on by Capital Metro to try to take some of the jobs, the bus drivers' jobs, which are good family wage jobs that a person who didn't go to a university could have a job where they could provide for their family. And the management of Capital Metro was attempting to, through the use of a two-tiered wage scale, to convert those family wage jobs into low-wage jobs. And that would have a extremely detrimental impact to a workforce that is primarily a minority workforce. And as you mentioned, that transportation is valuable to the community, and so it pits some natural allies against each other. It pit the workers who drive the buses against some of their natural supporters, community supporters of public transportation, because some of the expansions, like for instance the rail, is that the workers at Capital Metro felt that management at Capital Metro was trying to balance the expense of bringing rail to this community on the backs of the workers. And so it took natural allies and pit them against each other.
And what we find in Religion and Labor Network is that when we are having these types of struggles, and when, whether intentionally done or not as a strategy, when a business, for whatever reason, is pitting natural allies against one another and causing tension between the drivers and the laborers who need transportation to get to their jobs, for instance. But when the conversation is about money and about stocks or about whatever the issue is, then when you bring in imams and rabbis and ministers and pastors and priests and persons of faith and say, let's talk about what is right. Let's talk about how we treat our brothers and sisters. It completely changes the conversation because hopefully we're able to come in a much more gentle way. We're coming in not with necessarily any vested financial interest. We're coming in to lift up and say, let's talk about what is right, and seeking to transform the entire conversation into something that benefits everyone rather than just a few benefiting on the backs of many.
I think that there is this image and stereotype of one pitted against the other. And I think that is such a divisive way of approaching these issues. I think one of the things that Religion and Labor Network of Austin can do, and probably has done in the past and will continue in the future, is facilitate dialogue, discussions, communication between people in the community. Because we holding up that whole idea of the community at large and how we all need one another to make life to be the quality of life that we want for all of us to have.
Well, we were speaking of labor in the pulpits, and as you know, I have spoken at Gethsemane Lutheran on several occasions on labor in the pulpits, and it showed me that we do in organized labor operate against stereotypes, because I stood and I spoke to the congregation. I spoke about work that organized labor was doing here in Austin and in partnership with the faith community, and I spoke about helping workers recover unpaid wages where workers had provided their labor in good faith, and then at the end of the day when it came time to pay them, the employer disappeared, and so the workers were not paid for their work. And about the campaign that we did at the Austin Independent School District to get health care benefits paid to workers who built the Austin schools. And at the end of my talk, two separate persons came to me after I spoke, and they told me, you know, I've always been against unions, but I really like what you're doing. And so I realized that it's the stereotype that they didn't like. It's not what we actually do, it's the stereotype they have in their mind of who we are.
And I believe that's a very important point, is because so often I believe people of faith and people in the community really do want to do the right thing. They do not want to buy clothes that are supporting sweatshops. They do not want...
And you define a sweatshop how?
Again, a sweatshop is defined by the U.S. Department of Labor as any factory that breaks 2 or more labor laws.
And what would be an example of those labor laws that might be broken?
Whether it is locking workers into a factory, having them clock out and not be paid, but yet requiring them to work longer hours, having
and is this still going on in the United States?
Worldwide.
No.
And in fact, even in our own country, people believe that if they buy things that have the label that reads "Made in America," that it is not made by sweatshops, and that's incorrect. Both within our own country.
How can they know, Carla, that it's not made in a sweatshop?
That is one of the things that is so exciting about Austin signing on. We were the first group, or the first municipality, the first of any group in Texas to sign on to the nationwide Sweat-Free Coalition. And the coalition, as we build more and more city and county governments, universities and other businesses, we are forming a state and local government consortium that will be the watchdog, will be the monitor to
Carla,
investigate and make certain.
You have an interesting academic background. You have undergraduate degrees in
psychology.
psychology.
And a master's degree in psychology.
And then went on to Divinity School, Perkins School of Theology. And so you have that kind of theological background. Then you have a PhD out of A&M. And yet you find yourself working for this group here in Austin. What's you putting all those together, Carla? What excites you about Religion, Labor, and Network of Austin?
Again, I believe that people want to do the right thing, but often do not feel empowered to know what to do or how to go about doing it. An individual shopping and looking at the labels on the clothing that they purchase cannot know whether or not that garment has been made in a sweatshop. They don't want to know that a 13-year-old child made to work 16 and 18-hour days, 7 days a week, and locked in a barrack with armed guards have been the ones making their clothing.
That's a horror
but
story.
individually, they feel very helpless to act. But when we come together, whether it's to support day laborers who are building housing additions in our very area, and yet their employers, it is not uncommon. Wage theft is a very common problem in the Austin area.
Wage theft is what Michael referred to?
Yes, so that employees will work, but yet we have one wage claim right now that we are working with, trying to communicate with the employer to say, you owe these 8 workers $7,500. And the Texas Workforce Commission has said to you, you owe them this money. They simply don't have the resources to follow through and to garnish your wages or go to your bank account. They have the capability, but just not the resources. And so we go in to say, we would like you to do what is right. But individually, people feel very disempowered. But when we come together as labor and faith to stand with the bus drivers and mechanics, with the day laborers, with sweatshop workers whom we may never meet, together we have incredible power to make incredible differences in the lives of people here and abroad. And I believe people just need to know that. So
how can people who are watching Austin Faith Dialogue, who want to be a part of Religion and Labor Network of Austin, how can they connect with you all? How can their faith community, if they want to have you representatives in their pulpit on Labor Day weekend, how can they do that?
We would love to have them. We would love to, even if they are not able to have us have a speaker come in and speak in their services, they can, we can provide materials that they can use. They can contact us. They are welcome to call our number, which is 512-527-4455. That will reach me directly. They can also email me at Carla with a C at religionandlabornetwork.org. They can also visit our website at religionandlabornetwork, spelled out, .org, and get in touch with us that way as well.
I'll tell you, Michael, she has a mission.
Sorry,
I think.
it's
this is great, Carla. It's been good. You have to come back. We're going to have to talk some more about this.
Glad to talk
Michael,
more.
Congratulations on your story and what you've done with Religion and Labor Network of Austin. And Carla, we're so glad that you're in Austin and that you have this vision. And we hope for all of you, as you wind down your summer weeks and as you look forward to Labor Day weekend, that you'll contact Religion and Labor Network of Austin and know the privilege we have of being connected with one another so that dignity and justice for all the citizens of our community and the world. Peace be with you. Thanks.